We're going to build this staircase now, and I painted the fixture white just so it would show on the video. And also I noticed in the instructions the parts are placed so that it's kind of left-handed way to put it together. So I flipped it around so that I could do it in a right-handed way. And basically we need to put this stringer into the fixture and just slide it up till it hits the end there with the hole in the riser next to where it says hole on the fixture. So you just slide them up until they hit the end and then tape them into place. Then I cut the G2 part, the riser covers. Like it says in the instructions, you have to be careful that you got the right part here. Because the stair treads look almost the same. I take each one, I file off that little nub. So I find it easiest to dip these into the glue. So I'm just going to tap the ends into a little puddle of glue and then use my finger to make it thin. Make sure it's covering the very edges. And then you got to notice which way these go. So look carefully at the picture and then you just put it in place. Make sure it's centered and pressed all the way in. And the first one takes the most time to get it just right. Alright, and then we're just going to work our way down. One at a time, just dip it in the ends, flatten the glue out, and put it in place. And press it down in. You got to make very sure that it's lining up with the ends at the edge of the stringer, otherwise you'll have trouble later. So I just use a knife blade or my fingers and just make sure it's pressed all the way into place, all the way this direction and pressed against the stringer. So I'm just going to add them till I get to the end, and then by then these will be pretty well set. I can take the tape off and add the ones going up to the top. The stair treads work pretty much the same way. You can either leave the parts in the fixture or take them out of the fixture, whatever works for you. But we're going to do the glue differently. So for this, I'm going to put the glue onto the stringers. And then onto one of the long edges of the tread. And then that's going to go, the glue part gets pressed against the riser. And just scrape out any extra glue with your knife, I guess. Maybe the other end of the toothpick worked better. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to work our way up to the top step. On this second step, we're going to put glue on the riser and on this edge of the cover. And then press it into place. Make sure it's exactly to the edges of the stringer. Those 3 edges are enough to hold it in place, so I don't put glue on this just so I don't have to worry about it oozing out at all. So for the top step, I'm going to take it out of the fixture and put glue on these same 3 edges, and then put the last tread on, and you just make sure that it is flush with this edge here. So it's flush on the sides and it's flush on that end. You can do that by pushing it down onto your tool fixture. And then the last thing, it's a separate step in the instructions, is the very bottom riser cover. It's a different size than the other guys. There's an extra one on the sheet here. I just get one of these smaller guys. And here we're going to put the glue on the end of the riser and on the bottom side of this tread. And then we just put this last cover in place. Clean a little extra glue out of there. So there's our basic stair assembly, which we're now going to set aside because we're going to come back later and sand these sides flat. So we need to let the glue really set so they're not pulling pieces apart when we try to sand it. But we can start working on the banister. The banister is constructed in layers, and you want to put this piece so that it looks just like it does in the instruction book. And you can see I painted this yellow. I went over and hit the actual banister rail and the stringer sides and stuff, but it doesn't matter because all of this is going to be covered except for the posts and these gate boards here. So let's see, so place the banister as shown in the diagram below and attach 2 upper post pieces H6. So this is back to peel and stick. so we got two of these pieces. I pre-painted them. I don't know if you can see that in the video, but I painted them the brown trim color. And these go on the vertical posts. So I'm looking at the diagram in the instructions to make sure I remember where things go. And we just put them right over the top of the piece that's part of the banister. Press it into place. Alright, and the next is the lower post piece. So that goes on this lower post. And the outer banister railing. Okay, this is the piece I thought you would want to see. So there are two pieces that are very similar, but the angle of the cut at the end is different, so you got to make sure you get the right one. And that's where you have to check the drawing to make sure that this part is oriented the right way. And then with these long, thin pieces, you want to start at one end, push it right up against the it's hard to tell which side's sticky, so I stick it on my finger and then I know. You push it right against the post there, and then you kind of align the top and press that into place, and then you kind of work your way down. The piece is so flexible you can't really put the whole thing in place at once. So you just work your way down and you press that into place. And then there are pieces for the little porch railing there. So the top one goes very simply. It goes right across the top edge. I didn't get that quite right. That's not perfect, but I'm going to fix that with sanding it later. But the bottom piece, you want to check the instructions again, and notice it doesn't go on the bottom of the porch railing. It goes across where the boards come to an end at the base here. And then there's one more sort of tricky piece, and that's this It's supposed to represent the ends of the stair treads. So it'll look like the treads are the posts are coming out of the treads rather than the edges of them. This piece saw is a little hard to get out of the carrier. You might have to cut the backing or just gently push, working your way down. Okay, so the important thing to notice, put this over something white, is so that on the ends, one end is longer than the other one. And the long end goes on the bottom step. And again, with these really thin pieces, you want to line up just at one end and then work your way down. Okay, and then we're just going to turn this over. We're going to do pretty much the same thing on the other side, except there's not this Z thing with the tread ends. So we're going to put the same pieces, but on the other side. Okay, so this lower part, this last part, it should not cover any of the flat part. It just covers the bottoms of the board. So the bottom edge aligns with the line that's like between the boards and the flat part. Right, after I get all this in place, I'm going to sand the top of the banister so it's very flat. So you want to kind of take your time with this and get it absolutely flat across. So you can look, you can feel with your finger, but we want to make sure that that's completely flat. So everywhere that you see this, looks probably yellow, because you got paint all over everything, you sand it so there's a nice flat edge there. And then we're going to come back and paint that brown. And when we're done, this will look like 4x4 posts with the thinner boards mortised into the 4x4s. Okay, so that's that. So I'm going to paint this edge, and there's some parts on this side that you want to paint. So everything under the Z here should be painted brown, and this on this side, this part that comes down here should be brown. So I've painted the parts brown that are supposed to be brown, and I painted the stairs brown. And I let the glue harden because we're now going to sand both these sides flat. This is easiest to do on the table like this. And get that completely flat because we need a good gluing surface. Right, and then we're just going to glue the stairs onto the banister. Put the glue pretty thin because there's a lot of surface here. You don't need a lot of glue. Alright, so you just want to line up the tops of the treads and the front of the riser cover with the edges on the banister piece. And then clamp it in place with whatever kind of little clamps you have. We'll just let that harden and then we'll glue it to the side of the structure. So that's how you assemble the staircase.